Welcome to the Game Masters Book Club, where great fiction becomes your next great tabletop role-playing experience. For the next 4 weeks, we're coming to you from Rising Phoenix Game Con in Milford, Massachusetts. This is the con's 5th year, providing fantastic tabletop role-playing experiences, along with board games, amazing panels, great vendors, and an immersive con experience. Game Masters Book Club was invited to interview both of the guests of honor, Hugo-nominated authors Elizabeth Bear and Scott Lynch, as well as 2 other amazing local authors attending the convention, Trisha Wooldridge and Monoquill Blackgoose. In this episode, we talked to Hugo-nominated author Scott Lynch and discussed the first of his Gentleman Bastard series, The Lies of Locke Lamora. On our panel, we have not only Mr. Lynch himself, but 3 veterans of the Game Masters Book Club podcast, Chris Granis, Sean Murphy, and Ian Eller. We discuss crime, competency porn, crime, layered world building, crime, economic theory in magical medieval worlds, crime, GURPS characters, crime, sci-fi writer snobbery, and, well, crime. Let's get into the conversation.
All right, fantastic. Okay, everybody, one more time, welcome to the Game Masters Book Club. My name is Jackson, the host. I told you, I'm the worst speaker on my own podcast. I'm the host of the podcast, and I am here today with a bunch of really lovely people to talk about The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch, including Scott Lynch. Yay! Scott Lynch! That's fantastic. I'm going to have all the rest of our Game Masters introduce themselves. We're going to start all the way at the end, and when we do, they're going to tell us who they are, and they're going to tell us about the criminals/mafia things that have happened in their game. Anything at all. It's all fair game. Talk about anything that involving any sort of organized crime that's happened in your tabletop role-playing game. So all the way down at the end, Ian, go right ahead and kick us off.
I like to think of this as the beginning, but fine.
Fair enough.
I'm Ian Eller. I am a freelance writer for RPGs. Been doing it for 25 years. I have a couple of novels. In addition, I love crime. And my current game that I am running at this very con is about C-list supervillains that are trying to make their way, and it's hard. Last session, they pulled off not Batman's head. So there we are. We're doing good.
All right, fantastic. Chris?
I'm Chris Granis, formerly in publishing as a dictionary publisher, and now doing other things because, you know. But I am...
Words stopped mattering.
Words have stopped mattering. No one knows what anything's defined as. It's a mess. I am currently playing in a game where I am playing a thief. I'm playing Aladdin, actually, pre-Genie Aladdin, and that is where I am, causing much havoc, mostly to poor Sean here, who's sitting beside me as the GM.
I'm Sean Murphy. I'm a longtime gamer of various genres and characters. I think that most of my heist situations have been blessed by the dice gods in the sense of every time my group makes a really good plan, they inevitably fail their stealth rolls. Every time they sort of wander into a situation, they can only get nat 20s. I'm looking at you, Dave. I'm looking at you.
I guess my name is Scott Lynch. Is this video or audio only? Audio only. So we can lie about shit.
Yeah,
you totally can.
I'm so glad to see so many hundreds of you here on this this opulent outdoor garden balcony that we've been given for this podcast. It's fantastic. And this is great whiskey. Oh yeah, peacocks. Subpar peacocks, I must say. I mean, those are not Gen Con peacocks.
They are red. And Dave was responsible for those.
Yeah, apparently I wrote some books once upon a time, and some people liked them, and I've now lived long enough to see myself become part of the appendices, which is kind of surreal. But no, I've been a gamer for an increasingly vast number of years, and it absolutely feeds into so much of the fabric of basically everything that I write. There's no denying that. So.
Absolutely. That is good to know, but can you tell us a little bit about crime?
Crime, well, it's fun, it's remunerative.
In your game, perhaps? I'm sorry, I didn't need to make that more specific. I apologize.
In fiction. You know, what's really interesting is that If I'm playing like a single-person role-playing game, like if I play Morrowind or Oblivion or Skyrim, of which I've played entirely too much or that sort of thing in my life, I will rogue it 100%. But typically, if I'm actually playing tabletop with other people, I very rarely play the sneaky stabby sword. I like playing heal bots. I like playing magicians. It's kind of weird. I'm simultaneously very nurturing and very nefarious. I express them in different ways at different times.
That sells. That's fantastic, and in fact ties in with my quick Mafia piece. I am Eric Jackson, the host, in case you've forgotten who I was at that point. But my current in my current campaign that I am playing with Dave, I am playing an ex-Mafia guy who is now a healer, and so Way of Mercy monk in 5e D&D. So I'm doing this whole thing where I punch people, but I heal them. So it's very exciting stuff.
Right now.
Yes. Normally, at this point, I would normally summarize the book because I love to read and I love to talk about the books as much as I can. But I have the author right here, so I see no reason other than to say, Mr. Lynch, would you be so kind as to tell us about this book, The Lies of Locke, Lamora, and what it's about?
Oh, damn it! You're gonna make me.
That poor guy, he hasn't read it since
Make me. Hello, author. Explain yourself.
Explain yourself, author. Tell us what this is.
Well, I mean, interestingly, you do reach a point when you're writing a book where, you've worked your way through the first draft, and then you get copy edits, and then you get your proofreads, and by the time it goes to press, you are so sick of it, you never want to see a single word of it again. But then time offers you the blessing of memory loss, and you can someday pick it back up. Working on the fourth book in this sequence, I have reread all three of the previous ones, and either I'm going senile or darn it, I'm just that good. But there are points in each book where I'm laughing out loud at my own jokes. So if you just write something funny, set it aside for 20 years, you will eventually come back and it will entertain you again. But The Lies of Locke Lamora, what went into this and why did I write it? I was, so I will give you the hopefully the not TLDR version, but close to it. When I was a teenager, I was kind of a science fiction snob. It didn't mean anything by it. It just kind of happened that way. Most everything I was reading a lot of Asimov, Joe Haldeman, a lot of cyberpunks. I tripped very heavily over William Gibson, Bruce Sterling, Neil Stephenson, Pat Cadigan, etc. And one day in the hall at school, one of my little buddies from the LARP that I was in just walked up at random and handed me Ray Feist's Magician, tattered paperback copy of this, and he just said, "Dude, read this." And I said, "What? I'm not going to read this. This is fantasy. I don't read fantasy. I read science fiction, don't you know?" And he wouldn't take it back. He walked away and he just said, "Dude, read it," and showed me the back of his hand. And I'm like, I'm not gonna. Well, long story short, 2 days later I was at Barnes & Noble buying the second book in Ray Feist series and the third book and the fourth book. So essentially that kind of knocked me out of my intended life path. I previously I'd been intent on, I was gonna be a science fiction writer. A proper cyberpunky science fiction writer, and from that point on, I was doomed to be a damn dirty fantasist. So when I finally started writing Lies, I guess the whole design, the thesis was, I want to write Ray Feist novels, but I want to write them as I would write them. I want to get into the things that I really like, and I was also the closest thing I had at that point to a mentor in the writing world was a guy named Matthew Woodring Stover, who's the author of, among other things, the novelization of Revenge of the Sith, several Star Wars books which are excellent, Heroes Die, Blade of Tyshal, the Acts of Cain sequence. He's a magnificent and underrated writer, and I was fortunate enough to be on a forum with him and a couple other writers, but he was the one who had the biggest influence on me. And one of the things about Matt's work is that he is really, really vigorously into grit, blood, and swearing. He's kind of where I learned, all of my bad habits. But this is more than 20 years ago, and it, as ridiculous as it seems, it felt a little revolutionary. It felt a little, that sounds so grandiose, but to me, in my inexperience, it felt amazing. Like, oh my God, you can put swears in a fantasy book. Wow, amazing. So I kind of built everything out of that tapestry. I wanted a Ray Feist novel, but I wanted it a little dirtier and a little grittier and a little swearier, and I wanted to be as good as Matthew Woodring Stover, and I'm not, but I wanted to try. So don't you roll your eyes at me, Miss Woman who is married to me.
How's it working out for you so
But
far?
you know what? But I blasted all of that ambition into it. You know, I reached very hard on this one. I didn't always hit what I was aiming for, but you know, I held nothing back. Mentally and emotionally, everything in the kitchen sink is in this book. And I just, you know, I wanted a landscape that was vivid. I wanted the city to, you know, I wanted people, you know, flipping through the pages to be able to smell it, to feel it, to get that impression of a lived-in place. So, you know, I had a lot of wants. I had a lot of desires, and, you know, only 600 or 700 pages to squeeze them all in. So, you know, like I said, it's you don't hit every target that you're aiming for, but you hit enough, and you don't have to be ashamed of it. So that's Lies.
A fantastic summary.
I hope.
How about you? How about you guys down here? What was your? If we were talking about themes from this book and stuff that we learned and stuff that we enjoyed, what are we going to go with? I'll start with you, Sean.
So what I really, and it's interesting to hear that your science fiction background, because there's so much of this book, and it'll make it difficult when we get into trying to apply this to game system, that could be in pretty much any genre by moving things around. The whole magic, science, relationship, etc. And I was thinking stainless steel rat a lot of times through it.
Oh, God,
You got
yes,
a lot of
Harry
Harrison coming through
I got
here.
into so much trouble as a teenager, influenced by stainless steel rat books.
Because there's so much of the sort of twist, but there's all sorts of other books where the characters have twists going on all the way through it, and I handed this to my significant other, saying, "You'll love this. There is so much detail on every page that's the kind of writing that she just loves," and she's over there nodding her head, saying, "Yes, she does love it."
Chris?
Mine, who isn't here, actually was the one who's handed this to me, saying, this is too violent for me, but you're going to love this. But yeah, she picked it up. We saw you at BosCon this past year.
Okay.
So she picked up the book and she ate it up and said, read this. And I'm like, okay, great. And doing a panel with him, great. I really loved the sense of place. I mean, other than, there's some stuff that we're going to talk about, we're going to steal from it later, and I'm going to talk about the stuff we're stealing from it later, but I loved, the city felt alive to me in the book, and I think that really helped. Felt like a fantasy Venice. I'm hoping that's what you were going for, because that's what I got out of it, and it was just, you could see the places, you could feel the places, you could smell the places, and I like that about a world that you can sort of immerse yourself in as all of the industry goes through.
Let me add to that. There are lots of places that you didn't see either. Like the other member of the Gentlemen, she's there, she's mentioned, she's a clearly important character. We never meet her. You probably don't put in more than 20 sentences to her, and she looms throughout the book. There's a lot of the places, too, where things are mentioned, you're like, that sounds really interesting. Oh, we're not going down that alley. We're going over here instead.
Yeah, it was just well-constructed world was what I liked about it. It felt real. You felt, the grittiness.
Thank you. It feels a little odd sitting here and receiving the praise. So okay, and now everyone praise the leader before we begin the cabinet meeting.
Well, I did say it started out too violent for my wife, so
Okay,
that's
some criticism.
Not all
You're doing
praise.
okay.
Ian will take care of this.
I am known for my opinions. Anyway, I find it actually super interesting that you talked about how cyberpunk was a major influence on you prior to this, because I also find cyberpunk to be an interesting genre because it is not actually a science fiction genre. It is a social genre, and therefore you can do cyberpunk in fantasy if you are talking about wealth disparities and access to power, and sometimes magic is tech and sometimes tech is magic, but that's really what we're talking about, right? So the question in Lies about who controls access to these tools that make people rich is a cyberpunk story, and that comes through very, very clearly. Also, I love Feist, Serpent Word Saga. It was a formative book for me.
All great stuff. You guys have covered just about everything that I was gonna talk about. I'm a fan of competency porn, and all of your characters come across as these very well-crafted characters who are excellent at what they do. Even the bad guys, even there's very few just here I am kind of guys. It's all really super awesome, and that is one of the reasons why I reread it over and over and over again, because when I want to see competent people do competent things, this book is what I go to. So that's why we're here. So now that we've talked a little bit about what the book is, and we've talked about what is in it and all of its themes, what if we wanted to put this in a tabletop role-playing game, right? If we wanted to run this thing, what would we run it in? How would we evoke the best possible parts of Lies? Ian, you want to start us off?
My go-to, almost always, unless I want something very, very specific, is Savage Worlds. And the reason for that is that it has dials that you can tweak, right? And because the violence can be scary in both this book and Savage Worlds, that's a good choice from things have gone really bad very quickly in the circumstances, right? Obviously, there are games that are built to be heisty, whether it's the Leverage RPG that came out years ago from Cortex or whatever, but I think it's more important if you're talking about playing a game in which grit matters. What you really want is for things to be able to get dangerous by accident quickly, right? And then when we're improvising, because that's what we do at the table, that sudden shift to, oh shit, right, is something that's important. And you get that in a game because you didn't know what was going to happen when the dice were rolled. And a game like Savage Worlds, it's very swingy, gives you that in a way that I think a lot of games that are sort of curated toward a specific experience don't.
Sean? Skip Christopher in.
You're never going first. Wow, it's real rough. I was thinking 7th Sea, precisely because it's the mechanics of it are swords and such. There's certain classes that have access to magic. There's definite sort of within the sort of there's divisions within there. There's societies. There's a structure in there for nobility and for class structure that works in there, and there's enough uncertainty to how things action that you could sort of find ways to have the sudden turns that happen in this book work out well in terms of, as you said, sort of the unexpected sort of twist. 7th Seas provides enough mechanics for the players to be like, oh, I'm going to do this thing so I can get out of what seems like an impossible situation.
Chris?
I'm going to cheat and say Blades in the Dark, since it is one of the ones that is, that cites this as an inspiration. So I love the rogueness of it. You are all out running around doing all of your the group dynamics that are in there, the timer dials that they have for all of this, so you can check off as things are going. It just really works for a system for it, and it just really is built for it. My alternate, if that one didn't work, because it's like, oh, Blades in the Dark, that's cheating. The other one would have been, I would actually put it in Eberron for the feel of the city. Put it in someplace like Stormreach in the Eberron city, setting rather, and just have that for just the immersiveness of it. I don't usually run 5e stuff, but that would be a definite second choice for me.
Yeah, it definitely has that same sort of that built-on feel that it's good. There's a lot of stuff happening.
The history without having to really build all the history yourself.
Yeah, which is great. Before I pass it on to Scott to tell us what the real answer is, I also had talked about Savage Worlds was what I was originally thinking, but I'm more comfortable in the Cortex Firefly sort of universe, and I like that mostly for the flashback mechanic, because it is the sort of thing where if you can say, it's like, hey, remember what happened in Budapest, kind of a thing, and that feels very much like a way that you can get out of those situations when things get really terrible. You've got that idea and you've got this long-standing crew where you've got we've got this, that what you're going to do, what we know what A, B, and C is, and we can make that happen. So that was where I was going. But Mr. Lynch, would you care to tell us, if you were going to run your own book, what would you run it in? Well, this is not an official endorsement of any particular game,
oh dear. All right. So back in the day, I will date myself. I will. Back when Lies was first in gestation, so this would have been around 2001, and actually the first notes that I started sketching down in any constructive fashion were for what would eventually become the Thorn of Emberly. And I started writing book 4 in the sequence, and then decided that I didn't feel like I'd spent enough time with the characters. So essentially.
So we've just been reading backstory?
Well, yeah. What you've read so far is actually me spending time with the characters to get to where I started 25
that
years
level
ago.
of backstory.
so yes, I did that
18,000
thing.
zero pages of session 0.
So somewhere in my papers there are the characters statted out in GURPS, because that's what I had back in the. GURPS is marvelous because so many people are enchanted. GURPS has a very enchanting promise, like yeah, it'll be fun to create characters. You can do anything, and then you create the characters and find out that you're dealing with the GURPS system. And so you create the character and then don't play it because it's in GURPS. But I did enjoy making GURPS characters. Also, Ars Magica. I scored a $5 copy of a secondhand. There was a whole pile in my local game store one day in the 90s. First edition Vampire the Masquerade softcovers and like the outdated edition of Ars Magica. And that again is a game I've never had a chance to run, but boy, that is a fun system. And that is an extremely fun system to create characters in. I could actually see running something Lies-ish in Ars Magica, because it is gritty enough for my tastes, but it is also like specifically written to be in an archaic, fantastical world. Like the flavor is baked into the mechanics. It's not just like we're going to build a generic system that can go anywhere, do anything. I really like Blades in the Dark. I have no complaints with it. We play Swords of the Serpentine every 2 months or so with some friends of ours, and I really, really like it, which is not a guarantee, because I'm not always a huge system light, rules light kind of guy. I'm not a big proponent or enjoyer of the sort of game where it's like, tell the GM whatever you want, and then vibes happen. It's like that. That to me is less a game and more just sitting around bullshitting with your friends, which is awesome. I love sitting around bullshitting with friends, but that's not a game by my lights. And there's just enough resource management and so on and so forth in Swords of the Serpentine, Blades in the Dark, that my brain registers it as a game, and I really enjoy messing around with it.
Well, and then Swords of the Serpentine is a gumshoe game, and that dovetails with the idea of the competence porn, right? You are good at what you are good at in gumshoe games, right?
Which is so rare.
You don't have to roll to be good at it.
The gumshoe system, like as you said, I was really intrigued by that thing you said. The curated experience, like that metagame aspect where there's a resource or there's some sort of intentionality where like you say we want to have a swashbuckling pirate experience, so if something happens contrary to that, I spend a swashbuckling pirate point and swashbuckling stuff happens. Right. I don't necessarily enjoy that. I sympathize with that approach. I appreciate a game structure that rather incentivizes the sort of play in the direction that you want it to, rather than like I do understand that like sometimes you just can't get away. Like the James Bond role-playing game is the first time I ever encountered the old Victory Games game from the early 1980s. The first time I ever encountered that aspect of design where players get action points or hero points or whatever it is, where like, no, I don't like that outcome. James Bond doesn't get punked like that. James Bond does James Bond shit. So let's ignore that death in a death trap. Yeah, so I enjoy systems that incentivize toward the behavior that you want, rather than sort of just giving you the ability to scrub mistakes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and when I said curated experience, I was coding but not saying Blades in the Dark, right? Like Blades in the Dark is a great game for the thing that it wants to be, but it really kind of only does that thing that it wants to be, right?
And like that's like the genius of the gumshoe system, like Trail of Cthulhu, that whole idea of like, what if we just eliminate that whole thing where search for clue, don't find clue, get stymied.
Right.
And just build in the assumption that you're going to find the clues, and the rolls just kind of tell you how you get there, and what misadventures are going to occur along the way.
You get to pick whether or not you're going to spend resources to know more, but the basics you can get. What to do next, right? And as opposed to just stopping people.
You start out assuming competence and not dirt farmers.
Yeah.
have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah, I have. I'm very, very fond of one of the coolest game ideas that I've ever encountered. Knights Black Agents, which is vampires and so forth in the Cold War, and it's one of those games where I just wish that they had some graphic design applied to the book, because the layout it's a brilliant game, but like you can't flip through it for fun.
So many of
The
those.
way that I did with so many games back in the day. Alas,
It's almost like writers are not necessarily great graphic designers.
no, and I put myself in that category. Like graphic design is not my passion.
All right. Well, since we're focusing now, moving towards some more graphic-y kind of things, that puts us into the idea of stuff that we're going to take from the system. We're gonna find what are the images and ideas that you want to pull from Lies and drop directly into your game. Chris, do you want to lead us off on that
Well,
one?
since it is a thing about stealing, we're going to steal stuff from
Yes,
it. So,
it is.
I would actually steal the Bond Mage. I think that whole idea of this society of all of the wizards have gotten together and said, we don't want to get killed, so if anything happens to any of us, all of us are going to destroy everything about that person. So we're pretty much clear from any danger for the most part.
So we can do what we want afterwards.
We can do what we want. We'll just, pretend that, we'll take commissions for ridiculous amounts of money. And if anyone does anything against us, it's going to wipe out them, their family, their friends, their pets, everything, and possibly their city, depending on how much they pissed us off. Loved them. Loved their Scorpion Hawk. The whole thing about them it tickled me, and it's something that'd be easy to drop into anything else. I have a second one, but I'll let someone else speak if they don't have it, because I like it.
There's
a bunch to steal from this.
We'll get around. Sean, you want to go next?
So, my problem with lots of my games is that my players want to do things, and then I create what I think are fun challenges, and they're insurmountable. And you got to be at two places at once. There's no way. You've got to both be this guy in the same meeting, and if you don't show up, you're doomed. I think those are fun to put from players, but they often don't know how to do it. And I feel like the idea of trying to figure out how to give that option and bring that into play is something I'd like to try to bring into my games. And Chris, I am looking at you with this, of the impossible choice and giving them and assuming expertise enough to be able to get through the other side of that in a way that the book is quite forgiving in the sense of how they get through. Like the guy, he takes a sickness thing in a world with magic and potions and such. The GM of that, if this is a story from a game, the GM went, sure, go ahead and roll performance and see how that works. Oh, you rolled reasonably well? Great, that works. And that's how you get on the other side. So the idea of the impossible choice, and it happens a lot of times in the book, where they're like, how can you do these things? And he solves them, and the book allows those solves in a way that I as a GM often don't. So that's the thing I'd like to bring in.
Ian?
Sean is a no GM.
I am. Really, it's a problem.
I like the layers of lies, and I wish I could figure out a way to employ that in game. In other words, the idea that they are lying to their marks. They are also lying to their bosses, right? They are lying to society about who they are. They're the small-time robbers. No, they're not. They're like advanced con artists, right? But the layers of lies are a thing that I think would be a really interesting way to play a game, where the PCs, their job is to maintain these fictions in order to do what they want to get done. I don't know how you do that in a game, but it's super intriguing about a way to play a game,
Agreed.
I see you thinking, Sean.
I am thinking. Yeah, I mean, because you're right in the sense of they only pay a small amount of money every week. And I think the difference is they have a big vault, they're getting away with this, and they don't have anything to do with that money. Like, that's the problem, is that players, if you give them big vault of money, they're going to want to buy something big.
Plate.
Like, just people that, if you could get the players to say, like, I'm just doing this for the fun of the adventure, more or less, to sort of live in a certain lifestyle with my friends, If you could get them to do that, I'd be a lot more open and stop saying no so much to that.
That's what I like. That was the second thing that I was going to put in there, or leads right into that. I loved the fact that their stealing was a religion. I loved the idea of this whole cult, this 13th god cult there, that, you know, the reason they were stealing was for the holiness of it, essentially. This is what we do. You know, we have to discard thousands of gold to cover the deaths that have been caused there that were accidental, or if someone else has, you know, harmed a member of our crew, you know, they have to be paid in the destruction of this wealth. And that being an organized religion of thieves within a game, either as a PC or an NPC group, that feels really visceral and cool to add in there. That, you know, it's not something I'd seen done before in terms of, you know, this holy thievery, so to speak.
I've stolen so much from your books. I cannot tell you the number of campaigns that have been based around various ideas. The glass towers from the ancient people. I've played a thief in somebody's game who was basically a member of the 13th. The one that I think I did and actually worked the most successfully actually was the Teeth Show. I love this idea of of there being like creatures in the water and having a whole water-based city, and then because you live there, you have these really cool creatures. That was, I think, one of the most exciting combats I've ever run in a 5e game.
Awesome.
Was based off of my characters trying to survive a teeth show. So I can definitely say that was on my list. So maybe not quite as philosophical as some of my friends here, but definitely incredibly practical. Really great stuff. All right. Anybody else? More stuff? There's tons in this book. So is there anything else you guys want to add?
Well, it's a great city that's super fun. Like, you could drop that in any fantasy world, it'd be awesome. Right?
Yeah,
You go visit.
yeah, you could. You absolutely could. Anything else you want to tell us about this game-wise? I know you said you were playing GURPS and you've made characters. And is there any other inspiration that you want to drop in here that we haven't already mentioned?
Well, you know, as I said, you know, I mean, all the inspirations that actually fed into it would have been stuff that I'd read or played, you know, prior to 2004, 2005. So, you know, I mean, I played a lot of stuff since that, you know, did not exactly feed into it in a foundational design sense. But, I mean, commenting on some of the things that you guys just said, I mean, one of the other things I did not mention is that there's a lot of economics in the book, because one of my weird fascinations is archaic economics and just, you know, the practicalities of currency and currency exchange and wealth exchange and so on and so forth. And the thing you mentioned, where, you know, these guys are sitting on, you know, a generational pile of wealth by anyone's standards, but they don't have any legitimate means to do anything else with it, was deliberately written because one of the things about real world con artists is that distressing amount of the time, so many of them don't have escape plans. It's a recurring thing that people will pull off incredible multi-million-dollar scams. There was a guy in the 80s who basically posed as an art dealer in Manhattan and picked up clients on a fraudulent basis and decorated an apartment and took in millions and millions of dollars, and then just kind of sat there like a deer in the headlights. Like, stuffing the money in the bag and running off to Canada was never a part of the plan for him. He just sat there and didn't have an exit plan. Not having an exit plan is one of the recurring themes. I mean, it's one of the essences of the Locke and Sabbatha dynamic that comes up, you know, later in the series, that has been sort of talked about in the Republic of Thieves, which is, how did you think this is going to end? When were you going to do something with this? You know, you've got to have more than just squatting atop this pile of treasure the way we always squatted. You've got to have a plan, man. But also part of it is, like, there's just no laundering this stuff. Like, there's no legitimate way in this society for people who don't have any background or pedigree or status or legal right to this money to just go buy stuff. There's no investment opportunities. There's no banks. There's no laws about this. I had a conversation at a convention with a poor kid in the audience who was so close to getting it. He's like, but it's not fair. It's what do you mean? It's weird for people to have large amounts of money. There's no way for them to save and buy houses. And it's like, yes, it's not fair. You're getting it. It's profoundly unjust. There's no economic mobility. There's no economic freedom. That's part of how I kind of reconcile, a lot of the criminal aspects of this book, which is like, these guys are not just criminals. They're criminals in a society that has no legitimate outlets for people like them. There's no way to build you can't buy a chain of 7-Elevens. There's no American dream in Comore. You will be beaten. Your money will be taken from you. You're not supposed to have it. So yeah, they've amassed something, but they can't do anything with it. So there's so much economic commentary and so much economic nerdery hidden in these books. And I enjoy doing that in games. I mean, I deliberately also, in games, for very good reasons, monetary systems generally make sense. 10 copper makes a silver, 10 silver makes a gold, and 1 gold buys soup because you're in Fantasyland. I deliberately set out to obliterate that and get back to, if you look at like authentic medieval, reckonings of coinage and notional coinage, they're incomprehensible. They're madness-inducing. 240 quirbits makes a bazongo. 10 bazongos makes a dingus, but the dingus doesn't actually exist. It's not a coin. It's just a figure of note, only used in Florence. And I wanted that. And I treasure the notes that I get from people where they're like, I can't make heads or tails of the monetary system. I should, put notches next to my desk. You got another one. I love it. Yeah. Anyhow, so yeah. Sorry, that's my random ass commentary.
Going off what you started with, though, theft is often pathological. Like people who are con artists don't do it because they want money. I mean, they do.
It's the love of the game.
They're sick. Like legitimately, like. When we say Ponzi scheme, that was a real guy who did a thing that he could have walked away at any time during that process, and he didn't because he just couldn't stop.
Right? Yeah, people who just can't stop lying, even when it doesn't gain them anything, even when people know.
Sorry, you said they can't leave, and I was like, I'm going through my head like, no, I think they could have. They have all the way of dressing up like the people that could invest and put it into a boat. And they don't, and that's the story for me, and that's what I wish I could get my players to buy into, is that getting the wealth, the endorphin rush from getting that, like they talk about leaving, and he just says, no, I think we can make it through. I think we can keep rolling the dice. I'm not going to argue with you because obviously you are the author, but but I do.
But you were wrong.
But I do think it's interesting you said it because now it's making me rethink. Like, oh, maybe they could.
Well, no, I mean, and the thing is a strong enough won't becomes a can't.
Sure.
There is that whole thing where it's like on a practical, on a basic practical level, sure, they could put all the money in a boat and go elsewhere. You live in a horrifying. Uh-oh, my wife is giggling. Okay, you live in a horrifying, unfair, plague-ridden, evil shark-ridden, sea monster-haunted, hellscape written by this jackass who's out to kill you.
But it's yours.
You don't. There's no internet. You don't have maps. I mean, one of the fun parts of the novellas that I'm working on at the moment, which bridge book 3 to book 4. Is that Locke and Jean are taking a long walk across hundreds and hundreds of miles. They don't have maps. They don't know what this continent really looks like. They flip through books, but they need directions. Like they're taking a 16th century version of a walking tour. They don't know anything about anywhere else. Like there's nowhere else to go. They know of these distant, far off cities as notions. They visited one of them when they were teenagers, but like. The whole concept of packing up and moving elsewhere is really fraught because, elsewhere is a big, dark place.
Which is very typical to the whole medieval concept, where like the worst thing that could conceivably happen to you is for you to be kicked out of the city, because then what? Like,
There outside there be darkness and dragons and things like that.
Exile is so much worse than death because you're bound to die and no one will know.
Okay, and on that light note, let's talk about. We've had Scott talk about a great deal about influences, but let's talk about stuff that resonates with this, stuff that you guys have been through that you think other types of media that would, if you were reading this and you were like, boy, I'd like more of that, and I've already read the books and the novellas, what else is there? Ian, you want to kick us off with that?
Yeah, I think that because we're talking about something that is like deeply rooted in crime, I think that everybody forever should definitely watch every episode of Leverage.
Right, fair.
Right? Like, just from the perspective, especially since this is a gaming podcast, the way you look at problem solving from that show's perspective, even if you're not playing a Blades in the Dark or whatever, that gives you the opportunity to like edit the past or do your prep or whatever, the way that it is clever will feed into the way that people come up with cool solutions at the table, which means it'll be more fun. And again, crime. Everybody loves crime.
And crime. Chris?
Well, I like lighter stuff, typically. I do run most of the comedy games, so I would, take this, and I felt Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, because it just feels, if you want to take this and go to the silly, there you go. Matchstick Men, again, the book or the movie, Catch Me If You Can. Again, if we want to get some real-life con artistry and such. And I would, for a video game, the old video game Thief. I think it still holds up. Mm-hmm. I love that game. It's real good stuff. And I just had the plug for the next book I'm doing for this, which is Six of Crows, which just sort of has a similar good thiefy background.
Leah Bardugo?
Yes, Leah Bardugo's Six of Crows.
Dishonored is
Love
a good,
them.
like, spiritual successor, too.
Oh, I love Dishonored.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It really is bad going third when we haven't talked beforehand.
You think that's bad? Wait till I have to go after all of you.
So what I will
Sean.
recommend is I just finished, I can't remember, it's Mrs. So-and-so. It's a book about a woman in the 1800s. She came over from Eastern Europe to New York City, and she started an advanced fencing operation. And so it was a time when we were just starting to have policing, and people were going in and doing scams or breaking into banks by buying the office next door, or digging in a hole in the one office and going to the next door. And the whole process of her moving things through her network, thieves protecting thieves, the police being on the take sometimes until one person shows up and is going to show them, and then doesn't for a while and then does, and her eventual sort of finding a way to get out of the country with a good portion of her money and being miserable because there's nothing worse than being exiled. So,
where I'm going with this is going to be, like I said, I like competency porn. I think that Locke and Miles Warkosigan have similar, are genetically related in some way, perhaps in the deep future. So that is fantastic. Almost anything by Alona Andrews has these really competent characters who do all kinds of really great stuff. The Magpie Lord, fantastic series where you also have these really great folks. That's where I'm coming from on this. If I'm looking for things that are similar, you guys have covered a lot of the thievery, and I'm very much on the incredibly competent characters. So that's where I'm pulling my stuff from. We're at the end where we talk about stuff. We're going to save you the best for last, so we'll start with Sean. Sean, do you have anything you want to promote from your podium of power right now?
I do not know how I got to be the best of last in this group. But anyway, no, I'll just say everybody who enjoyed this con, come again next year. And then the other cons I'll be at this year will be Katahdin Con, which is a new con in Portland, Maine. I'll be at Total Con in Medford, Massachusetts. And there's probably one other one that I'll pop into because feels like you can't go a month or two without seeing a con around these days.
Right. Chris?
I don't have much to promote. There is the Salem Game Con, which is starting in July, which I'm going to attend and run something. Run a What We Do in the Shadows type game. That is my shtick. Other than that, I don't know. Buy a dictionary. It doesn't help me anymore. But quite frankly, know what words mean.
I am, after many years of freelancing and writing for other people's games, I am working on my own, and I hope to make that thing happen in the fall, and we'll see whether or not I get to a point of playability at cons by then. Also, the best book ever written is called Elger and the Moon, and it's by me. And you can find it on Amazon.
It is another really good book, and I've said this to you before, that it shows you things but doesn't reveal all the things. There's still plenty of places to go, so when are you going to get that next book?
Well, I like single novels, and I don't know. I've tried to write the sequel a number of times, and I don't read sequels often. I like a good story, and then a new good story, right? So I don't know. But I think about it all the time. I do think about writing the sequel all the time.
And speaking of good stories, Scott Lynch, what do you have for us?
Oh, I don't do that.
Oh, okay.
I just write my crap. So there is a company up in Canada called Conversation Tree Press did a special edition of the only existing Gentleman Bastard short story, which is Locke, Lamora, and the Bottled Serpent, which was published in 2 parts in Grimdark magazine over the last 18 months or so. And that sold out in about 6 minutes. So we just did a deal to have them do an ebook too, and that ebook should be available within a couple weeks. So people will actually be able to read that in an easier fashion and not have to buy the now extinct special edition. Also, God, I feel like such a jackass. So I was recently nominated for my first ever Hugo Award. I'm not even going to tell you why. That was so nice. We'll just leave it at that. No, it's for a story called Kaiju Agonistes. It's a novelette, which is free to read online. It's at Uncanny Magazine. And I was really touched by that. It's nice to be, I have no complaints in the literary department. I've been very blessed and very fortunate, and my readers are very generous. But it's nice to be noticed every once in a while. So I was very proud of that one. I think it's hopefully very amusing. It's a dry, satirical Cold War science fiction piece about what idiots human beings are. It's about the struggles of a monster from the stars that is ostensibly here to teach us the folly of experimenting with nuclear weapons, and discovers that we're really, really hard to deal with. So yeah, Kaiju Agonistes.
Cool. All right, fantastic. Officially, that's where we usually wrap up for this, but we do have an audience today. So it could be very interesting to ask folks in our remaining 5 minutes, does anybody have any questions about games or Mr. Lynch's work or anything, or about the podcast or anything? Please, hands up.
Everybody's terrified.
Yeah. Thank you for starting it off.
Scott Lynch, how do you feel about, I want to say, we were talking about...
You got this. You got this.
Thank you. The mob has a religious code, right? Or had a religious code. It's how they were able to stay consistent for a while. It was blasphemous to snitch, to rat, to talk about something. And then human greed got in the way. And I was like, how do you rectify that in your books? Where we have this, we have these people following this religious code, but why aren't they sticking it out? Why aren't they stomping on their own principles more often or all the time?
Well, one of the things you need for that is you need a concerted assault upon those institutional values. And that's one of the things that happened to, the mafia in America, is that, for decades and decades, there was a concerted federal assault to, it used to be a very rare and bizarre thing for someone to turn informer. And now it's so commonplace, it is, lost, any measure of distinction. It's basically, it went from being a very rare and difficult thing to achieve to basically just it's one of the available mobster retirement plans. You basically, you either die or you go into the program. And it happens on a continual basis. And no one in Comore really has applied pressure from above to wipe out the right people in that fashion. But that's what it takes, is basically a carrot and a stick applied on a generational basis to break that code and to provide something else, if that makes sense.
All right. Any other questions? That's a great one. All right, that's a great one to end on then. So we're fantastic.
Okay.
Thanks
you
for
may all live.
Yay! All right, clap so that Scott may get lunch. All right, fantastic. Thanks for listening to our talk here at the Game Masters Book Club. Tune in anywhere where podcasts are. And thank you, Mr. Lynch, for attending.
Yeah, much appreciated. Thank you.
And thank you, Rising Phoenix GameCon, for hosting us yet again.
And that was The Lies of Locke Lamora by Hugo-nominated author Scott Lynch. who was on the show along with three amazing Game Masters Book Club veterans, Sean Murphy, Ian Eller, and Chris Granis. What a thrill to have Scott Lynch on the show. As my obvious fanboy behavior may have indicated, I'm a long-term fan of the Gentleman Bastard series, so this episode is extra special to me personally. Thank you again, Scott Lynch, for being on the show. Thanks again to Rising Phoenix GameCon for making this series of interviews possible. Be sure to check out their website at risingphoenixgamecon.com and make sure to leave room in your gaming calendar in late April to attend the con in Milford, Massachusetts. You can find a complete transcript of today's discussion, as well as links to all of our podcasts at k-squareproductions.com/GMBC. You can learn about upcoming episodes on our social media on Blue Sky at gmbookclub.bluesky.social, on Facebook at Game Masters Book Club, on Mastodon at Game Masters Book Club, and on Instagram at Game Masters Book Club. If you've enjoyed the show, please like, subscribe, and comment on our episodes in your chosen podcasting space, and be sure to share those episodes with your gaming community. You've been listening to the Game Masters Book Club, brought to you by me, Eric Jackson, and K-Square Productions. Continued praise and thanks to John Corbett for the podcast artwork and Otis Galloway for our music. Later, gamers, and to paraphrase the great Terry Pratchett, always try to be the place where the falling angel meets the rising game.